Hey, everybody, welcome to It Came from Generation X, episode 3 of our podcast. Happy October. I'm Sam Weller.
I'm Tom Diebold.
We're so happy you're all here today, given that it's October. I think I can vouch for Tom here. This is our favorite time of year. Andy Williams was wrong. It's not, Christmas is great, but October is off the charts. And so we're excited today to move into the subject at hand, which is, Tom?
Horror, our favorite genre, I think.
Yeah, we love it. We love it.
You've made a career out of it, dude. So, why don't you kick this bad boy off?
Well, I'm just going to move fast on that, but I got these babies, dude. I won 2 Bram Stoker Awards, homie.
Woo! Right there, man.
This is kind of like the Oscars of horror, and I got 2 of those. For my work related to Ray Bradbury, and that was just joyous, mind-blowing. I'd love to add a third to that, but we'll see. I'm actually working on a book right now that's nonfiction that is, we'll get into this momentarily, but it's a fusion of heavy metal and the occult, I would say. I'm not going to go any further because I don't want anybody to rip the idea off, but it's balls to the wall awesomeness. So it's like... Excellent. Taking what I did with my Ray Bradbury biography, but moving it over to exorcisms, the demonic, and rock and roll, which, I'm no Satanist, but that shit's cool nonetheless, right?
Right. Exactly. You're always drawn to the evil shit,
Yeah, I know. Bradbury told me once that he met Anton LaVey, who was like the high priest of the Satanic Church, and he's like, that guy was such an asshole. I'm like, careful, man, he's gonna put a curse on you.
Right. He was hot shit in Hollywood back in the 60s.
Yeah.
Anton LaVey was everybody was going to his parties, and
Whatever happened to that guy, man?
His daughter runs it all now, I think.
Oh, good for her. So all in the family, man.
The legacy.
Yeah.
The LaVey legacy.
That is fucking hilarious, man. Yes. So as we've done in the past, episode 1 and episode 2, we started, and we don't want to get locked into this, folks, for our audience, but we started with kind of our origin story with Kiss and how they entered our life. Episode 2, we went all Star Wars on everybody, which was a blast. And we talked about our Star Wars origin story. So why don't we go to that, Tom? What is your entree into the realm of horror? Your earliest memories of what made you love it?
Well, all right, horror. I've always loved the genre. Of course, we grew up with Scooby-Doo, and always drawn to the horror cartoons, the scary stuff. And for me, it really started with every year on Creature Features they would show The Haunting, the amazing Robert Wise film, and my mom would make a big thing of caramel corn, and me, my mom, my brother would sit on the couch and watch The Haunting every year. And that's what got me into, the first time I saw that movie, I was like, oh my God, that was scary and awesome. Yeah. So from that, but really what kicked it into overdrive was my brother took me to see Halloween in 1978. So being a 10-year-old, going up, and it was a snowstorm at Foxfield, so we had to call for a ride home.
Foxfield was the local movie theater in glorious St. Charles, Illinois. Yeah. Yes,
and so 1978, that movie scared the absolute hell out of me, but in the best way possible. That was horror movies can be. It's don't get me wrong, I love the gothic black and white stuff like that. Yeah. But when I saw Halloween, I was like, holy shit, this is what you can do with horror. I'm in, and I've been locked and loaded ever since.
Yeah, as we move through this episode, I don't think this is a spoiler, but we're going to both name our top 6 favorite horror films. We've gone with
Mhm.
6 for a reason we'll name later. Some of you are already smart enough to figure that out. But I'm sure we're going to talk about Halloween again in a moment, because you're right. That film just absolutely rattled me to the core too. So, and
Yeah.
kudos to your amazing brother for bringing his 10-year-old little sibling to
Yes.
see an absolutely like blood curdling movie, man.
Well, and I'll ask you after this, but what was your hand, hey, this is horror, come on and check me out.
Yeah, there's so many components. I mean, you threw it out. People are going to giggle at this, but I suppose the first real exposure comes with Scooby Doo, which is laughable because it's got a laugh track and a dog and a weed fueled Casey Kasem voiced hippie. But I found Scooby Doo as a little boy to be creepy, and I love that.
Yes.
So that might be the door creeps open slightly, but the big moment for me came. I was living in Malibu, California, and I had a 10-inch or 14-inch black and white box television in my bedroom, and a movie called Race with the Devil starring Peter Fonda was on. Dude, I mean, and it was about a devil cult, and they were doing a sacrifice. They were sacrificing a woman. Little did my parents know out of the kitchen that in my room with the door shut, I'm watching some woman tied up in this cult and a high priest getting ready to kill her. And I'm just sitting there watching this shit, and it scarred me psychologically, to this day. Of course, it becomes this sort of chase movie after that, as Peter Fonda and his friends out in their Winnebago, as I remember, are watching, are a distance away watching this sacrificial ritual occur, and they get busted. The devil cult sees them, man. I mean, we've all been chased in our life by something. It's kind of a universe, whether it's by a vicious dog or
everyone has a chase dream.
Everybody, and that movie just scared the bejesus out of me. And I realized, holy shit, I kind of like this feeling.
Right.
And so that led me then to Kolchak, the Night Stalker, the television show, The Cryptid Hunter, which I think you love too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Kolchak, and then, Twilight Zone, but I really loved Night Gallery. Alfred Hitchcock Hour, the reruns of that. I wasn't alive then, but watching reruns of that, that's all great stuff. And Rod Serling was way ahead of the curve back in the day.
Yeah.
He's phenomenal.
Yeah, I think, arguably the top shelf horror television of any era, you could argue that it's Rod Serling. Be it Night Gallery or certainly the Twilight Zone. I mean, the writing on that show, whether it was Rod Serling or whether it was Richard Matheson or Charles Beaumont, those stories were, and this gets at why horror is so amazing. While they're scary stories and they're freaky stories and stories of the fantastic and shit that is what is termed low fantasy, like it's earthbound. It could happen. Maybe it's in their mind. It's not fantasy that is on another planet or in another universe. It's stuff in our world that potentially could happen. We've all experienced surrealist, weird stuff. And I think Rod Serling tapped into that. And most importantly is that every episode of the Twilight Zone, every episode of Night Gallery, those stories always were about humanity and emotions and the human condition. Like you said, man, I mean, absolutely top shelf, exceptional writing, great original ideas. And, I think the only thing personally that could come close to it today on television and it still doesn't touch it. In the horror genre would be Stranger Things, and Stranger Things is fantastic in my opinion. I just think Serling, name another anthology television series outside of Night Gallery or Twilight Zone that's better.
It's I mean, Spielberg Amazing Stories wasn't bad.
Great.
But Jordan Poole recently relaunched, I think, Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it. I don't know if it's good, but I remember they did it back in the 90s. They relaunched it, and it just wasn't good because the writers that Serling had available to him at the time were all giants in that field.
Yeah, they were. And they were all proteges of Ray Bradbury, which is fascinating. I mean,
didn't he have a Twilight Zone?
He wrote 3 episodes. 2 were not produced because of budget issues. They were too expensive to make. So the scripts are out there, but they were just would have been too expensive. And then there was 1 episode that was made that was actually a very sweet episode, which I think Bradbury had a very sweet side to him. And so it was the Electric Grandmother, the episode about
that's a great one.
The children whose beloved grandmother dies, but there's a company that builds replicant robots to replace your dearly departed loved ones, and the children love the robot. And it's also a weird departure because Bradbury was very skeptical and cautious of technology in the hands of human beings, and this is kind of a weird extrapolation into pro-technology stories. So very, very cool. You can't speak highly enough of either Serling or Hitchcock, both of whom altered the genre forever.
Yeah, and then and TV today, horror TV anyway. I don't know about you. I'm not a giant fan of American Horror Story. It's more shocking than it is horror, I guess. Is the way I would put it. There's nothing scary about any of it, and there's a couple of seasons that are good, and not to bag on that guy because I've liked some things he's done. The Dahmer thing he did on Netflix was fantastic.
Yeah.
But I don't really, there's not a whole lot of really good horror going on. Black Mirror on Netflix is pretty good.
Yeah.
But outside of that, it's I want an anthology series back or a half-hour thing like Twilight Zone. That was great, and it showcased how suspenseful or scary or whatever you could make something in 22 minutes.
Yeah, I think you're getting at something that is a whole different discussion. But just briefly, you're getting at something really, and you're hitting a nerve with Hollywood producers and New York book publishers, and they're afraid, and I know this from my own vantage point as a writer, they're afraid of the short form. They think that audiences don't like short stories, be it on an anthology television show or in a book. I have a rejection letter in my files from Farrar, Straus, and Giroux, the New York book publisher, rejecting The Illustrated Man by Ray Bradbury, saying, it's too bad this isn't a novel. It's just, there's not enough meat on the bones. That book now is considered, a literary classic. In fact, the one story that leads that book off, The Veldt, about children who have a virtual reality chamber and they become obsessed with it. They love their technology, and the parents get nervous and they try to wean them away from it and get them off of it. And the kids get pissed off, right? Because they're basically trying to take their fucking tablet away.
Right.
And that story is constantly anthologized in collections of the highest literary art next to F. Scott Fitzgerald, next to Toni Morrison, next to William Shakespeare. That story, The Veldt, is always in the Norton Anthology of Short Fiction, and it was rejected by publishers. And I think the same thing happens in Hollywood, is that people get nervous about this idea of the anthology show for whatever dumb reason. I don't know why. But I think personally, given the epidemic of attention deficit issues in our country, it seems like the short form television anthology show is a no brainer. You know,
Yeah.
you just watch one episode and then you're not locked in for 5 seasons.
Right.
I'm with you on American Horror Story. I like the idea of American Horror Story more than I like American Horror Story.
Yeah. Whatever. And again, and we can talk about this for a minute.
Yeah.
What is horror? To me, might not be horror to somebody else. I'm sure I would tell people my top 6 list, and there's guys like, oh my God, those aren't horror movies. That's terrible.
Yeah.
Well, to me, they are. Me, like Saw movies, that's not horror to me. That's just torture porn.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
I need atmosphere. I like dread. I like the feeling that horror bestows on you.
I am 100% with you, man. I mean, I like psychological horror that doesn't the fear is more off screen than on. And I think that that's far more frightening because now your imagination is filling in the margins, not, some blood and guts gore that's being spoon fed to your brain and your eye.
Right.
But here's another point is that no offense to people who love that shit, like Ginger Wildheart, who we'll have as a guest at some point on this show, the front man of the Wildheart, loves blood and guts Saw horror, loves that shit. And you and I have talked about this in the past. In our first 2 episodes, we've talked about fan communities and their sort of obnoxiousness, their toxicity. In the world of Kiss, everybody knows everything and they'll tell you to fuck off. In the world of Star Wars, it's worse. They're often,
if that's even possible.
I know, but it doesn't seem to happen that way in the horror world.
Oh, very accepting. I think everybody in the horror movie is very accepting. Nobody looks down on somebody for like I'm not going to tell somebody, oh, you like Saw, you don't know what you're talking about, And a lot of times that's how you hear about movies or books that you haven't watched or read yet. Yeah. Somebody will turn you onto it, and horror is that one genre. Like music. Somebody will say, "Listen to this band," you'll listen to it, and But movies, hey, here's a horror movie. I really liked it, and if you like that person's slant on horror, you're excited about it. But if it's somebody you don't even know, you check it out anyway.
Right.
Very accepting.
What do you think our psychological attraction to fear is? There's certain people who I don't like horror. I don't want to be freaked out. The world is freaky enough. We've got enough going on. But there's obviously a huge, huge percentage of our population who like to seek out feeling scared. What do you think that is? Why is that?
I think it's some of it is the unknown. You want to be presented with these things, however horrible they may be. Exhilaration. Like me, I hate roller coasters. I can't stand rides and carnival rides. I don't like it. But there's people that love that. Like my wife would go on any ride, but she was not always a fan of horror movies. She's like, I don't, that's scary. It makes me feel. She didn't like the way it made her feel. So for me, I think it's just that unknown that people like to be at the edge. They like suspense.
This is part of the thrill of people getting in an airplane and jumping out for the first time. I mean, there's just
right.
It's maybe I'm wrong. I mean, we're just playing armchair psychologists here. Break out our pipes and play Freud for a minute. But I think some people gravitate, as you said, towards the exhilaration, the pushing the boundaries,
Yeah.
And that doesn't just happen in the realm of horror genres. I mean, we could extrapolate that to a lot of other topics. that get really fucking weird, actually. But people are weird, dude. I mean,
Yeah,
and
innately. I mean,
the number one genre in podcasting is not talking about things. Weirdly enough, Tom, it's not
yeah,
talking about shit from Generation X. I know
no,
you believe, and I believe that the
it
number
is.
one topic in podcasting is fucking true crime, man.
I
You know?
know. Uh, it's that's huge. I mean, HBO, Michelle McNamara, Patton Oswalt's wife,
Yeah,
who wrote a book about, I think it was the Green or the Golden Gate Killer.
yeah,
Um, that started off as a podcast,
yeah,
and turned into a book and turned into a series on HBO,
yeah.
all very well done. It was great. But yeah, true crime, people they can't get enough of it. And the true crime podcasts are like solving actual crimes,
I know.
you know?
That's ridiculously cool, man. I mean, it's just a bunch of fanboys and fangirls and fan theys. I'm being, accepting of the non-binary world here. Fan
Yeah.
everybody, who fucking they have a fucking podcast and they're solving cold cases.
Yeah.
Uh,
Bringing it back to Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, totally, man. The meddling kids, man. They're all over the fucking internet now.
Although this time it's not always old man Jenkins in a mask. It's like actual killers.
Exactly. They don't drive a fucking psychedelic van with
No.
smoke pouring out of the back.
Prius. Yeah, Prius. No. Beautiful
Right.
Prius.
You're making me laugh. Okay, any other points on the genre of horror before we move into our next topic?
No, I think we covered how we came to it, why we love it, and
Why- why it impacts-
what's awesome about you is you love it and you've turned it into a career, kind of. That's awesome, and that's for I think that's one thing you want to do in your life, that you have a passion about horror. You always have. I've known you since you were like 13.
Yeah.
And you've turned it into a career, and that's awesome.
Yeah, no, thanks for saying that. I mean, I my last book was a collection of short stories, and it's oh, dude, man, you're just like Janice from The Price is Right, man, or Vanna from Wheel of Fortune.
And might I say, if you're a fan of psychological horror, the first story in this book is a ripper.
And weirdly enough, based on a true crime book, it's kind of totally meta. I mean, it's about a guy. It's about a guy who rents a murder house on VRBO. Basically, I'll say no more than that. But
pick it up.
Yeah, I've been working with a producer at Paramount on that. An extrapolation of that idea of rent. What would happen if for example, if the Amityville house came up on VRBO and it was available to rent for a week, people would go for it, man. Like, wouldn't you? I'd love it. Why do you think people?
Dude, there's people that like rent hotel rooms that are like around the corner of the Exorcist stairs.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
Yeah, that this is tangential, but I'm fascinated by like hotel rooms where celebrities died. So like, did they change the number outside of the Beverly Hills, whatever hotel in Beverly Hills Whitney Houston died in? Did they change the number so people can't figure out which room it was in, or the hotel where Chris Cornell tragically died? There's a lot of celebrities who die in rooms, man.
Well, I'll bet you the Sid and Nancy room you could probably stay in.
Oh, fuck yeah, at the Chelsea, right? Yeah. My family and I went to a hotel outside of Milwaukee once. My dogs are barking, so I'm snapping my fingers. Hey, dudes, shut up, man. We're doing a horror podcast.
They're scary.
They're watching like dog horror. Hey, you guys suck. They're killing me.
Are they watching Cujo?
It's Cujo. I have two tiny Cujo. Cool it. Hey, doing a podcast here, man. This is professional. Hey. All right. So we rented this. We went into this hotel, and we got there like 4 in the afternoon, there's still like wet towels in the halls and like trash. And it was a 4-star hotel, you know. It was very well rated. And like, what the fuck is wrong with this place? There's something really weird about it. So when we checked in and got in our room, I Googled the hotel, and there had been a shooting in the conference room where like 7 people were murdered because there was a church that gathered every Sunday in the conference room, and one of the parishioners had his, gun-toting freak-out moment, came in and blew the pastor and his family and others away, and then killed himself. And I'm like, oh great, this is why this place feels fucking weird. I'm fascinated by locations of tragedy, horror, because I think there's something about the energy of a space that lingers, and it's fascinating. So
it's like sponges.
Yeah.
Absorb whatever energies in it,
Full on, homie. All right. So we are not broadcasting this live, even though we can, and I think at some point we should. So this is not going to, and I think we should do a live broadcast in the tradition of Colbert or Letterman or whoever has done those. But we're reporting pop cultural news as it happens, even though you're getting it weeks later, perhaps. Suzanne Summers has passed away.
Breaking news.
Yeah, breaking news. Suzanne Summers has left us from Three's Company. So I think all we have left is Joyce DeWitt.
Joyce DeWitt.
Yeah.
And Richard Klein.
Yeah.
Come on, Larry's
still around. Of course. You can't. Larry, right?
Well, and then we can't forget about Terry, and we can't forget about Jenny. What's her name?
Right. But our main trio,
Yeah. Chris Snow.
So sad loss. Rest in peace, Suzanne Summers, man.
Thigh Master.
Yeah, man. You can't beat that. Yeah, she was amazing, dude. All right.
She was.
So,
top 6.
People love lists, right, Tom? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, people love lists. But, they're everywhere. In every industry, there's lists. And I think people like lists. I like lists because I will look at it and peruse, top 10 or a top 5, and I'll find something on there I want to read, listen to, or watch.
Yeah.
That's what lists are there. It's a great tool for exposing somebody to new material.
Yeah. I mean, we don't need to get into the full psychology of lists, but I think Entertainment Weekly as a magazine made a cottage industry of the 100 greatest films ever made. You had mentioned to me David Bowie's 100 greatest books ever written. I think it gets people to think about their own list. What would their list be? It gets them to disagree in their mind. Like, why would someone choose that? So there's a whole psychology to lists, and that's what we're going to do here today. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we're going to do our top 6 horror films. I'll give my 6. Sam will give his 6. And we kind of wanted to throw it to the audience on this one. If you're watching this, leave a comment with your top 6 horror films in order, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So that way we can compare and contrast our lists with our audience.
Yeah. And the reason we're going 6 now is because Tom's got 6, I've got 6, and our audience will be 666, the number of the beast.
Yes. Can't think like Bruce, but
yeah, exactly. But so leave your comments on our YouTube page of your 6, counting down 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or on any of our socials. We are active every day on IG, Facebook, X, and TikTok, to different degrees, but we're on all 4 of those platforms pretty regularly.
Or email us.
At
it came from Generation X at gmail.com.
There you go. Awesome. So why don't we fire it up, my man?
Let's do it. Top 6. You want to start?
I will start.
Number 6.
This will probably infuriate people that I even put this on the list because it's too perhaps new, but My list is just very personal. It's just like what
Yeah, as it should be.
And so my number 6 is 1999's Blair Witch Project. The whole found footage vibe of that thing freaked the living shit out of me. I was sucked into it. It totally seemed real. It seemed like some found camcorder footage of kids lost in the woods, circling back for hours and hours and hours and finding themselves exactly where they started. They can't figure out what's going on. The woods are haunted by this reputed witch figure, and they're getting increasingly panicked. It's got that jolting handheld camera vibe going to it throughout. The found footage genre is mostly attributed to beginning with a film in 1961, but that exploded the genre. And I think what's coolest about the Blair Witch Project is it was just a bunch of kids making a movie that ended up getting picked up by a major studio because it was a runaway success. And I love any time somebody does something totally DIY, totally out of the box. That's a concept that no Hollywood studio would have ever greenlit and purchased, but they followed it once they smelled the money and it was taking off. And I think that shows you that so much of Hollywood, it's about following, it's not about leading. And I think that film led. Great movie.
Yeah. Fantastic movie. The ending, quite possibly one of the scariest endings ever. But it was good. What I loved about that movie, and two things. What you liked about it, I liked about it in that they got to go like this to the industry. Like, yeah, you're going to pay us for this movie that cost like $500,000 to make.
Yeah.
You're going to pay us millions for it.
Yeah.
That was awesome. And that was right when the internet, kind of came about.
Sure.
And people thought that was real. They marketed that movie so well with a fake website, and they left clues every day. And it was just, again, our first two episodes had marketing, things about them. This was probably one of the best marketed horror movies ever.
Genius. I can't remember how I discovered it, but I saw some of that footage on television airing somewhere, and I thought it was real because nobody said this. Nobody had introduced it as a movie. I just tuned in halfway through it, and I'm like, this is fucking crazy, man. This is absolutely frightening. And all kids, you and I included, explore, whether you grow up in an urban setting and you're exploring blighted areas or weird neighborhoods, or you grew up in a rural area, or like you and I did in kind of a quasi-rural suburban demarc line. We were always playing around and exploring and wandering through the woods.
Yeah.
And, even going back to Nathaniel Hawthorne or Sleepy Hollow and Ichabod Crane. I mean, there's something about the forest that scares the bejesus out of people.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. All right. Number 6 for me, huh?
Yeah, man. Let's do it, dude.
They're psyched. Number 6 for me, Nosferatu, the classic F.W. Murnau. Amazing film. I love that movie for so many things. I know everybody's going to be, it's not scary, it's silent, it's black and white, whatever. That movie drips atmosphere. It drips dread. It's gothic. It's Max Schreck turns in one of the coolest vampire performances ever.
If not the best. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And just everything about that movie from beginning to end was fantastic. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah, just the imagery alone, it's just so striking. I think Roger Ebert named it as the greatest silent horror film ever made. It's certainly up there with the greatest horror films ever made. So I think that was 1922. Was that 1922?
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so.
I mean, I don't think there's a more frightening image of a vampire than that.
Well, and at that time, You had Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. You had Der Golem. You know, German expressionism in horror films was taking off to astronomical levels.
And
it was great.
Yeah. Yeah, German expressionism is so perfect. It's kind of like film noir, you know. It's very shadowy, dark, distended to an ugly degree. You know, the shadows are so distended; it almost feels it's nightmarish just visually. And that movie nails it. You know, I think you're absolutely right. Critically, most people would put that up there as possibly the greatest horror movie of, certainly, no doubt, of the silent era. No doubt.
Yes, definitely.
All right, so mine is going to get more argument. I mean, I think critically, I would agree with you and just go with Nosferatu. I would agree with you, but I think for personal sentimental reasons, I'm going with 1925's Lon Chaney's Phantom of the Opera. And while far more melodramatic and not as nuanced and not as narratively deep as Nosferatu, there is no more frightening image in the Phantom iconography or filmography or whatever. There's no more frightening Phantom, for that matter, than Lon Chaney's 1925 portrayal. When he unmasked, you see that face. I mean, it's macabre. It's gruesome. You know, he was the man of 1,000 faces. Go back to episode 1 and Kiss. They have a song. Gene Simmons had a song called "Man of 1,000 Faces." How can you not love, you know, this outcasted creature, shades of Hunchback of Notre Dame, living beneath in the subterranean, cavernous, torture chambered world of the Paris Opera House. Story of unrequited love, story of manipulation, story of loneliness. You know, as Ray Bradbury's biographer, that film really, really shaped him. He was 5 years old when it came out, and he saw it at the Genesee Theater in Waukegan, Illinois, which has been rehabbed. It's open again.
Rick Springfield plays there a lot.
Rick Springfield plays there all the time, man. This metal W is from the marquee of the original Genesee Theater.
Wow.
This thing, you know, they put that up on the marquee, and that it opened in sometime in the mid 1920s. And that film was profoundly influential on Ray Bradbury, and that also ties into why I love it so much. But I think that's one of Lon Chaney's greatest performances.
Yeah, the fact that you have him as the actor and the makeup artist, because he did his own makeup. That movie, it's another movie. A lot of the movies at that time, man, that you can just breathe the dread in that movie. It's soaked in atmosphere. It's so good.
Yeah, 100%. All right, so what's your next one?
Number 5 for me, Bride of Frankenstein.
Wow.
I choose that over the original. I love the original, but I choose Bride just because that was at the time, probably a really, really hard follow-up to Frankenstein. And James Whale knocked that out of the park. Same director coming in and killed that movie. That movie is amazing, and you got this amazing performance from Elsa Lanchester, who's not in it that much, you know, but when she's in it, you don't forget her. She's absolutely fantastic. And again, I guess I must love atmosphere, because that's another gothic movie that is just shadows, light, you're in a castle, and it was just filmed beautifully. So well done all around.
Yeah. Elsa Lanchester is just unbelievable, man. So iconic in that. You know, I was going to ask you, you know, what's your favorite Universal monster film? And so I think you just answered it.
Yeah.
You know, you and I have talked about this, but I agree with you after thinking about it. I love the look of the creature of the Black Lagoon. I love that character, but I think the greatest Universal monster movie is Bride of Frankenstein. It's just fantastic. And
So
she
well
has
done.
such a phenomenal career outside of that too. You know, I mean, what an icon of Hollywood.
Yes.
Yeah, married to Charles Lawton, who I'm sorry I keep going back to Ray Bradbury, but they went to Disneyland on the day it opened together. Charles Lawton and Ray Bradbury.
And Elsa Lancaster?
She didn't come with, but they dined
Oh.
all the time. Ray loved Elsa, and they would have dinner all the time at Charles Lawton's house. I mean, what a powerhouse of Hollywood, man! Just
Well,
yeah.
And just to keep it on Charles Lawton for a minute, a movie that almost made my list was Night of the Hunter, and that's the only movie Charles Lawton directed.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, great movie. Robert Mitchum with Hate, Love.
Oh my God!
Oh, yeah. Kids treasure. He learns about their dad. It's another story, but yeah, that's a great movie. That's a great movie.
Your picture just dropped out, and it says recording continues, but live video will return when their internet improves. I don't know what's going on.
All right. Hang on one second. Hang on. Let me see.
Yeah, I'm going to turn the light on. You know, this happens in the world of podcasting, folks. You know.
Yeah. My back?
No.
No?
No, we lost visual. It says it will return when your internet improves.
Well, my internet.
Oh, there you are. You're back. Yeah, baby.
I'm back.
In the New York groove.
All right. Where the hell were we after our technical?
Oh, shit. You just gave we both gave 6 and 5.
Yes.
So now we move to 4. Do you want to
4.
move off to 4?
You go ahead. We're throwing it to you for 4.
All right. Well, we can make this fast. And people might disagree with this, but I love genre mashups. And I don't think there's a finer science fiction horror movie than 1979's Alien, directed by Ridley Scott. Again, people trapped in a confined space with this creature that is scarier than shit. Just the design of that monster was so over the top and unexpected and original. Sigourney Weaver, I mean, one of her best performances ever, one of her most iconic characters ever. They discover this adrift ship, and then all hell breaks loose with that creature. And I think that this is a fabulous mashup of science fiction and horror enclosed in a ship adrift out in the depths of outer space.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I watched it last night.
Yeah.
And Ridley Scott was like, the nation was in the grips of Star Wars, and he was like, okay, you want a space movie, guys? I'll give you a space movie. And that's what we got. And it was absolutely amazing. And Aliens is I guess the bigger blockbuster movie, the sequel.
Yeah, it's great.
It's great, but that's more of an action movie to me.
Yeah.
Whereas Alien is more intimate. It's more horror oriented,
Right. Yeah, Aliens is fantastic, but it's more in line with Predator, where it's cat and mouse.
Yeah.
And Aliens to me is a horror film, and anytime you've got, whether it be at The Shining and it's people trapped alone at the Overlook in the winter, or anytime you've got your protagonist trapped in an enclosed space and they can't get out and they're with Resident Evil, I'm in. I love that genre.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Well, and that kind of dovetails into my number 4. It was hard to pick. I had to pick between 2 movies. So I picked Prince of Darkness, John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness.
Awesome. Awesome.
And I picked that over The Thing.
Yeah.
Talking about, confined spaces, claustrophobic. The two movies are kind of the same, and like Alien. But Prince of Darkness had this whole other element of, these biblical proportions.
Totally.
There's these priests called the Brotherhood of Sleep that have been around for centuries because they have Satan in this giant green bottle in the basement, and they have to watch it. And so they're gonna, they invite this research team to come stay for the weekend or whatever, and all hell breaks loose. That movie, the last 40 minutes of that movie is the most amped up, edge of your seat, like holy shit tension I've ever had in a movie. Absolutely incredible. The music, the direction, the pacing, that movie's kick ass.
I'm with you, man. And I think a point could be made here that without any doubt, one of the finest directors in the entire genre of horror is John Carpenter.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody can. I mean, people can contest it, but they're wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great choice.
For sure.
So that was your number 4.
4. Yes.
So now I go to number 3.
Yeah.
Nice dovetail, as you said. John Carpenter's 1978. I think everybody would expect this to be on everybody's list. Halloween. Enclosed Space again. We've got that going on. Playing on the old urban legend of the babysitter and there's someone in the house. That old sort of urban legend. I think if you look at the string of slasher movies that came after that, be it Jason from Friday the 13th or Freddy from Nightmare, in my estimation, there's no more frightening figure of that era than Michael Myers. And returning after his stint being sent away. And what we don't know about him, the mystery of that character is fascinating. Who is?
Just watch the Rob Zombie movies. You'll find everything out.
Oh yeah, thanks. I'll pass on both Rob Zombie's movies and Rob Zombie's music, and his band for that matter too, because they're all bad people.
The mystery. The mystery. It's fantastic. You don't know what he is.
I love that. I love that. That closet scene, dude, is, again, it's in the pantheon of great cinematic moments when she's down there, and he's breaking in, man. That you can't get any more frightening than that moment.
No. And then when it opens up, and being us from where we're at, it opens up with, Haddonfield, Illinois, and you're like, what?
I know. Totally.
At 10, 11 years old, man, you're like, holy shit.
I know.
Is there a Haddonfield? There was no Google to look up Haddonfield, Illinois.
No. There's just that one moment when he steps out from behind the wall of shrubbery that kind of imagery, man, is just so much more frightening to me than someone just getting stabbed to death. Just that jarring imagery of him stepping out with that face. I mean, it's just absolutely terrifying.
Yes.
I mean, Carpenter, whether it's The Thing, whatever, Prince of Darkness, whatever movie you want to pick, even Escape from New York, which is not horror, is scary. And Carpenter masters the psychology of fear. He totally gets it.
Yep.
That's my 3. What's your number 3?
3 for me, Night of the Living Dead, the original Night of the Living Dead. That was the, much like Halloween was a guerrilla film as far as the beginning of it was.
Yep.
Night of the Living Dead was kind of probably one of the very first, guerrilla films. You had George Romero, who was working on Mr. Rogers in Pittsburgh with Michael Keaton. He's borrowing equipment to film this zombie opus of his on the weekends, gets it put out, and the audiences from the premiere of it from the get-go, fell in love with it. And it's just tightly paced. It's so well shot. The music is fantastic. And again, you got everybody at the end of the movie stuck in this one house with all hell breaking loose around them. And not to mention, the social issues I think he tackled with that screenplay at the time. Maybe a lot of people didn't realize what he was trying to say then, but everybody gets it kind of now. And at the time, it was very well done.
That's a great point, man. I mean, that movie, there's tons of social commentary in it, and I think there were other zombie movies obviously made decades beforehand, but that puts the zombie movie squarely on the map. I mean, there's no Walking Dead without it. To me. And you said the editing, the pacing, the cinematography, the music, everything coalesces. It's just a fantastic film, and you put that director too on this list of greatest directors of the genre.
Yeah.
Without doubt, to me. And also, I would add briefly that people often associate social commentary when it comes to genre with science fiction, social science fiction, where you're using, I mean, Star Trek is a great example of a lot of social commentary, integration, dealing with issues of diversity and other things. Not a lot of people often talk about social horror, and that movie has a nuanced approach to it, and it's beautifully done. That's a very artful movie. Again, done on this sort of punk DIY, do-it-yourself ethos that I just love. Great film.
Yeah, fantastic. So where are you at?
I think we're going to number 2, baby. This was really tough between my 2 and 1. Both came out when I was very little, so I think there's a reason. That's when you really get. It's when you really shit your pants, man. When you're
right.
sick and your parents aren't watching you, and you watch. In 1973, I watched The Exorcist, and that movie, just in like Helter Skelter and things like that, it's like it was reputed that this is based on a true story, and we've heard about exorcisms through the Catholic Church for centuries. The Catholic Church does not deny that exorcisms occur on a daily basis. And that film, the demonic possession of Linda Blair and her portrayal is just so freaking scary to me, man. And just like the idea that, oh shit, could this happen? Oh my God. It's just absolutely frightening. And the makeup on her and how they transformed her, the head turning around, the pea soup projectile vomit, everything they did. William Friedkin, great director. I know you're a huge fan of his and in his other non-horror work. But man, that movie is an absolute classic.
Killed it. And that was one of those movies that at the time everybody was talking about. I remember my parents coming home from going to see that, and they were like, holy shit, that was the scariest thing we've ever seen. People were passing out, people were leaving, and I'm like, what? Yeah. So that is a great pick. And for me, Exorcist 3 almost made this list. If you haven't seen Exorcist 3, do yourself a favor. It's just as good and just as scary as the first one. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's directed by William Peter Blatty, who wrote the novel, The Exorcist. So, yeah, really good.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your number 2?
So, my number 2, we don't have to spend a whole lot of time on, Halloween. It would have been my number 1, but it didn't introduce me to horror. So number 2, Halloween, I loved everything about it. We've talked about it in this episode, but the one word that comes to mind, as far as people who love horror and film students, when people talk about this movie, they say this is lean and mean movie. And by that, there's no wasted film. There's no wasted dialogue. That movie is as close to a perfect horror movie as you can come. And again, like your story with Blair Witch, here's this guy who made Halloween on $1 million budget, got 2 checks because he was the composer too. He was like, hey, I can do the music, and that thing went on to gross who I couldn't even tell you now. But that was another guerrilla film where it was everybody get together, let's go. They blew all their money on Donald Pleasance,
Who's amazing. I love that guy, man.
Very little blood in that movie. That movie is just all tension. There's hardly any blood. Most of the violence you kind of see is done off screen. It's just scary as hell.
Yeah, I as you say all this stuff, I realize that I really love. I prescribe more when it comes to horror to the less is more.
Yes,
and I think that's why I love Hitchcock too. I mean, it hurts me to not have a Hitchcock film on this list. If I had a top 10, there'd be a Hitchcock film on this list. But I love what's off camera. To me, is often more frightening than what's on, because it's in the darkness, it's lurking in the margins, and that's really, really scary. I think this is the problem. We go back to our last episode with Star Wars, is that they're at the risk of mining everything to death, and telling the story of everything and not leaving as much as they can to the marginalia of the universe for the audience to supply their own imagination. And Halloween provides all that.
Absolutely agree.
So that's your number 2.
That's my number 2. We're on to 1.
Drum roll as we move along. I think people are going to be surprised at this because it's by no means a traditional horror film at all, but it's 1975 Steven Spielberg Jaws. Now,
for sure.
Hear me out. The monster movie is the subgenre of horror. Jaws is a monster movie, right?
Yeah.
And I think to what you just said about The Exorcist and Halloween and others, because of all the mechanical issues they faced in the production of making that movie with the shark, it emboldened the fear of the movie, because the shark is in the margins. It's in the darkness. It's off screen a lot because it was constantly fucking breaking down, right? And that made it become far more Hitchcockian. And it's a great character movie. The motivation of those characters out at sea is phenomenal. Brody, Hooper, and Quint all have their own distinct motives for being out there to get this thing. So it's not only a man versus monster or man versus nature conflict, but it's also a man versus authority conflict, because we've got the asshole politician, mayor of the small town, desperately trying to keep the beaches open for holiday season, to make money, which is what we see in politics all the time. I mean, what's the priority? People's lives or cash?
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think that's a phenomenal monster film that plays heavily on psychology. Yeah,
for sure. I love Jaws. Oh, hang on. I think someone's at my door. Hang on.
Get it, man. I'll fill in the blank here.
Fill in.
So what we definitely want as we proceed forward here is our audience to supply their top 6 down below in our YouTube comments. Subscribe and leave your top 6 on YouTube is our preference, because that's where this episode will be posted. But of course, you can leave them for us on the It Came From Generation X Facebook page, Instagram page, X page, or we also have a TikTok page. So you can leave them there, but please do that.
Yeah,
so
please do that.
My man.
Number 1, The Haunting. That's what started it off for me.
Love
That
it.
is a perfect movie. And 4 of my 6 are black and white. But things are scarier, I guess, in black and white.
I think they are.
For me,
I think they are.
and you're saying, leave things out of the margins. You're leaving the color out of the margin in that. So it's one way to look at it. That movie, I love so many things about that movie. The pounding that you hear that's scaring the shit out of everybody. The cat, but what really got under my skin was you watch Julie Mills, I think that's her name, this poor woman, break down and lose her mind throughout the entire movie. And at the end, it's a tragic ending for her. Let's just say that. But that movie, it's a home run on so many levels.
Fully with you, and it's a great nod to Edgar Allan Poe because he really, I think, took advantage of the concept of the descent into madness narrative as your main character spirals ever downward into insanity, fear, claustrophobia, just fantastic. I think you had mentioned what that's based on the Shirley Jackson novel, right?
Yep, Haunting of Hill House. And there's so many iterations that have been done of that. You've got the novel, then you've got a Vincent Price movie, and they're all good. But to me, the Haunting, no, they're all good with the exception of the 90s Liam Neeson, Owen Wilson garbage. That was terrible.
Qui-Gon Jinn, man. Qui-Gon Jinn.
Yeah, in a terrible remake of The Haunting. But it's just so good. I watch it every year.
You're making me want to it's October. Everybody should be binging a scary movie every day this month.
It's all I watch. It's all I watch for the month.
It's a blast. All right, that was a great list, dude. So
that was good.
We'll put a little graphic up of our top 6 in this. But those are great.
If you're watching,
yeah,
leave your comments.
Yeah, and tell us where you think we're full of it. These are just our opinions. But we have a sense that we're not going to hear from horror fans the same way we heard from Kiss fans or Star Wars fans,
right?
Who know everything and argue with everybody because they're miserable louses that live in their mother's basements. Just kidding. Just kidding. All right. Speaking of Kiss, we have this feature on our show called the Mr. Speed Round, named after the classic song Mr. Speed, right? From the 1976 album. What album is it from, Tom?
Rock and Roll Over, the greatest Kiss album ever made.
You did, yeah. That's your favorite album, right?
It is. It is. Every song on that album's a gem.
It really is, man. You've actually turned me on to Baby Driver now, man. You made a TikTok video of car chases set to Baby Driver, and I'm now looking at that song in a whole new light, man. Like Gene Hackman driving under the elevated tracks of the
banging the steering wheel
with Peter Criss singing in the background, man. There's like no better union.
Where was that movie in Edgar Wright's driving movie, Baby Driver?
Where was that song? Yeah.
I'm sorry. Where was the song? I mean, it had to have crossed his mind unless he just doesn't give a shit about Kiss. But I'd like to think he called up Gene and was like, hey, can I use Baby Driver? And he was like, yeah, give me like $4 million. And he was like, okay, yeah, no, and hung up.
Give me $4 million and buy a Kiss casket, and I'll give you. There's a demo floating out there, tangent, sorry, of Baby Driver with Gene singing it. And as much as I love Gene's vocals, like Gene's vocals on Creatures of the Night are unmatched, man. They're amazing. Peter Criss's vocals on Baby Driver buried Gene Simmons' vocals on the demo.
Peter's vocals, to me, I think he was probably the best vocalist out of all of them.
That would hurt Paul Stanley's The Star Child's ego immensely because Paul is a great singer, but I totally agree with you, man. I mean,
and Phantom of the Opera.
Railing, shake your pubbly blue or whatever he says on Nothing to Lose, man. Shake your huh. Listen to the Catman.
But he had that raspy, awesome voice. His voice sounded like cigarettes and whiskey. It was fantastic.
Exactly.
And could carry a tune and play drums.
Yeah, amazing, man.
So
and oddly, an argument could be made on this terrible Kiss tangent that he now has more integrity than any of the original members.
yes.
Whoever thought that this coke-addled Catman from the 70s, who couldn't even voice his own character in Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park because he was so freaked out on cocaine, now has the most integrity.
It's well, and famously, all he did was like go to Kiss conventions and bitch. So, yeah, people were like, "I got to get this album signed," but they like dreaded getting it signed by Peter because he just bitched the whole time. Who do you want me to make this out to? Great, thanks. Why aren't I in this band anymore? Who's wearing my makeup? Yeah, he would just walk around with like a fucking scotch and complain.
Right.
So
yeah, I know, man. I went to many of those conventions. I mean, most of the time they had to wheel Ace in on a stretcher because he was drunk beforehand. But
as big a Kiss fan as I am, I've never been to one of those conventions.
We got to change that, man. We'll do a live broadcast from one.
Kiss cruise.
Yeah, no, we got to do some of this. All right, so we got to kick it into Mr. Speed. The song is 3 minutes and 18 seconds. The premise of this is we fire some questions at each other. In this case, all related to horror. I will start. Tom, what's your favorite horror book?
Favorite horror, hands down, Pet Sematary.
Boom. Stephen
I
King
read it.
Writing book.
Yes, I read it in a span of 2 days because I had Slammer at the illustrious Geneva High School, and I had nothing to do for 2 days, and Mrs. Bashaw hated it, but I told her I didn't have homework and I was reading.
So. I think the day you were in there, I remember you were sitting at a desk, and I would come in and look in the window, and I threw popcorn kernels in one day, just to scatter all over the floor.
Yeah,
you were in there reading Pet Sematary,
dude. Before there were submarine pitchers in Major League sidearmers, you were winging spitballs in that room on your way by. Sidearm, dude. Like entire wads of toilet paper.
It ended very unceremoniously in the office of the dean, Chick Williams, and a phone call to my mother. And my behavior, I lament and I apologize for my behavior, but it did give us some laughs.
Yes.
My favorite book, I'm biased massively, of course, is Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury, made into a 1983 film. Not the scariest book of all times, but when you talk about atmosphere, it's just drips in shadow. And it's about good versus evil. It's a very ornate, very flowery, rich language, but small town, Midwest, 1920s, kind of the devil came down to Georgia, but no, instead he rolled into Greentown, Illinois in a circus train to steal the souls of all the people. Great book.
Fantastic book.
All
right. What is your favorite piece of Halloween music? Movie-related music.
Oh, a simple answer. Yeah, it's tough, but less is more, man. John Carpenter on that little keyboard, man. He had no budget. I heard him talk about it on NPR and just started playing that. People play that on their front porches on Halloween now. I mean, it's
right.
It is. There are arguably Michael Jackson's Thriller, Ray Parker Jr.'s Ghostbusters, Monster Mash, whoever performed that, I can't remember. I think that theme song to Halloween is the most canonical piece of music related to the holiday that exists. Perfect horror theme song.
Yeah. Mine would have to be it's Halloween, but not the main theme. The chase music, where it's just that bass, dun 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 dun, and then he hits you with the high pitched over and over and over and over again. That to me is like nerve pounding, amazing tension music. Fits 100%. The scene perfectly.
100%. All right, one more question before we wrap this up.
All right.
What? Okay, this is gonna catch you off guard. What is your favorite campy horror movie?
Oh, dude, there's so many of those.
I know.
Well, okay, all right, there's so many 80 ones that I wouldn't mention. But I have to go with Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
I was gonna say the exact same thing, dude.
Yeah. I mean, you got Abbott, Costello. You have Lon Chaney is in it. Glenn Strange as the monster, and you have Bela Lugosi, doing his awesome Dracula. Fantastic movie.
Well, we end this episode on complete agreement because that's what I was going to answer. We end our Mr. Speed round. We thank all of our audience for joining us. You want to remind everybody how to contribute again, Tom, one more time, and we'll say goodbye.
Please, if you're watching this, interact with us and just leave a comment. Take 6 seconds, jot down your top 6 favorite horror movies, so we can kind of take a look and see what's up. And stay tuned because we're going to have more horror-related stuff as the month goes.
Yeah, we're going to try to do some more short form. Tom and I love to talk, and so these episodes can go longer, but we're going to drop some short form episodes through the month. And all horror related all month long, leading up to, I think mutually our favorite holiday. As much as I love Christmas, and I know you do too, I think our favorite holiday together is Halloween.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
It's been great talking to you as always, my friend, my co-host.
You too, man.
Look forward to seeing people's comments, and we will see you real soon on the next episode of It Came from Generation X.
Rock on, everybody.